The shadow beneath Gotham. For years, Gotham had been Batman's battleground, a city steeped in corruption, chaos, and darkness. It had always been his burden to bear, his crusade to protect. But behind the cowl and the cape, Bruce Wayne had always harbored a secret dream. It wasn't the dream of a peaceful Gotham, for that was something even he knew was unattainable. No, his dream was far simpler: to be free. Free of the mask, free of the endless cycle of violence, free of the shadow that had consumed his soul since the night his parents died. But dreams are fragile things, especially in Gotham. The years had weighed heavily on Bruce. Every villain defeated, every criminal caught seemed to make the city darker, as though the very act of fighting evil gave birth to more. The Joker, Riddler, Bane, it never ended. And now, in the cold silence of the Batcave, Bruce could feel the weight of it all pressing down on him. He was tired. More than tired, he was haunted. The nightmares had started months ago, creeping into his mind whenever he closed his eyes. They weren't the usual dreams of his parents' deaths or the tragedies he had witnessed in Gotham. These were different, darker. In these dreams, Gotham was not just a city. It was alive, pulsing, watching him, mocking him. The buildings twisted into grotesque shapes, and the streets were empty, except for the shadows that slithered between the cracks. And always, in the distance, he could hear a voice. A low, guttural whisper calling his name. Bruce. At first, he dismissed the nightmares as the result of stress. Too many sleepless nights, too many battles fought in the dead of night. But they persisted, growing more vivid, more real. The whispers became louder, and the shadows seemed to stretch out, reaching for him even when he was awake. He felt them in the alleys of Gotham, in the corners of Wayne Manor, and even here, in the Batcave. One night, after a particularly brutal fight with Two-Face that left him battered and bruised, Bruce sat alone in the Batcave, his cape torn and bloodstained. He removed the cowl, letting it fall to the ground with a thud. His reflection in the glass of the Batcomputer stared back at him, hollow, tired. He barely recognized himself anymore. The man behind the mask had become a ghost, a shadow of the man he once was. That's when he heard it. The whisper. Bruce. He froze, his heart pounding in his chest. It was louder now, closer, as if it were right behind him. Slowly, he turned, his eyes scanning the vast, dark expanse of the cave. But there was nothing, only the distant sound of water dripping from the stalactites. He stood, his muscles tense, his senses alert. The cave was empty, just as it always had been. And yet, the air felt different, heavier, colder. The shadows seemed to move, shifting ever so slightly, as though something was lurking just out of sight. "Show yourself," Bruce demanded, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at his gut. For a moment, there was silence. Then, the whisper came again, but this time, it was not alone. It was accompanied by a sound, a slow, deliberate tapping, like footsteps echoing through the cave. The shadows at the far end of the cave began to stir, coalescing into a shape, a figure. Tall, dark, and indistinct, it moved toward him, its presence suffocating. Bruce. The figure stepped into the dim light of the Batcave, and Bruce felt his blood run cold. It was him, or rather, a version of him. The figure wore the Batsuit, but it was twisted, corrupted. The cowl was cracked, the cape torn and frayed, and the eyes. The eyes were empty, black voids that seemed to suck the very light from the room. Bruce stood frozen, staring at the figure, his mind racing. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. But the figure moved closer, its footsteps slow and deliberate, each step echoing through the cave like the toll of a funeral bell. "You can't escape me, Bruce," the figure said, its voice a distorted version of his own. "I am the shadow that you created. I am everything you've buried, everything you've tried to forget." Bruce backed away, his fists clenched. "I'm not afraid of you." The figure laughed, a hollow, mocking sound that reverberated through the cave. "Aren't you? You wear the mask to hide, to protect yourself from the darkness. But the darkness is inside you, Bruce. It always has been." The figure stepped closer, and Bruce felt a cold hand grip his chest. It wasn't physical, but it was real. He could feel the pressure, the weight of it crushing him. The shadows around him seemed to close in, wrapping around him like a suffocating cloak. "You've been running from me your whole life," the figure whispered, its voice now in Bruce's ear. "You think you can save this city? You can't even save yourself." Bruce struggled to breathe, his vision blurring as the pressure increased. He tried to move, to fight, but his body felt heavy, weighed down by the years of pain, loss, and regret. The shadows consumed him, pulling him deeper into the darkness. The figure's voice was everywhere now, echoing in his mind, in his soul. "You are the darkness, Bruce. You are the reason Gotham will never be saved." Bruce's knees buckled, and he fell to the ground, gasping for air. The figure stood over him, its black, empty eyes staring down at him with contempt. "I am your final enemy, Bruce, the one you can never defeat, because I am you." The Batcave around him seemed to dissolve, melting into the shadows that swirled like a storm. The walls, the equipment, the vehicles, all of it vanished, leaving Bruce alone in the void. He reached out, trying to grasp something, anything, but there was nothing. Only the darkness, only the shadow. For the first time in his life, Bruce felt truly powerless. The figure knelt beside him, its hand reaching out to grip his shoulder. "You will never escape this, Bruce. You will never escape me." And in that moment, Bruce understood. The darkness had always been a part of him. The mask, the cape, the mission. It had all been a lie, a way to hide from the truth. He wasn't fighting the darkness of Gotham. He was fighting the darkness inside himself. And he had lost. As the shadow consumed him, pulling him into the void, Bruce Wayne, Batman, disappeared into the very thing he had feared the most. The endless, inescapable darkness.